The sandwich was nothing special. 2 slices of white bread, some leftover chicken from last night, a thin spread of mustard, and a single leaf of lettuce that had already started to go soft. Danny Hale wrapped it in the same brown paper he always used, shoved it into his bag, and headed out the door of his tiny room on Relay Station 41. Relay Station 41 was the kind of place people forgot existed. It floated at the far edge of colonized space, a gray metal box spinning slowly in the dark between 2 shipping lanes. It had no scenery, no attractions, no reputation. Ships stopped here to refuel and left as fast as they could. The crew who lived aboard were mostly maintenance workers, fuel handlers, and a few cooks who made the same meals every week on rotation. It was boring. It was quiet. And Danny had been here for 4 years. He didn't mind. Some people needed excitement. Some people needed adventure. Danny needed a routine. Wake up, shower, fix whatever pipe or panel had broken during the night. Eat lunch on his favorite bench near the docking bay window. Fix more things in the afternoon. Sleep. Repeat. It was a small life, and he was fine with that. The bench was his favorite part of the day. It sat against a wide observation window that looked out over the main docking bay where ships of all sizes came and went. Danny liked to sit there and watch them. He liked to guess where they were going. He liked the way the station hummed beneath him, a low, steady vibration that felt almost alive. Today was a Tuesday, which meant the chicken sandwich. Danny sat down, unwrapped his lunch, and took his first bite. Then he noticed he wasn't alone. A woman sat at the far end of the bench. She hadn't been there a moment ago. Or maybe she had, and Danny had just not been paying attention. She was thin, almost too thin, with silver-blue skin that caught the docking bay lights in a strange, soft way. Her eyes were large and dark with no visible whites, like looking into deep water at night. She had no ears that Danny could see, just smooth skin along the sides of her head. She wore plain gray clothes, simple and undecorated, the kind of thing a traveler might wear to avoid attention. She wasn't human. That much was obvious. But the station saw aliens every day. That wasn't the part that caught Danny's attention. It was her face. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from a bad night of sleep, but the deep kind. The kind that settles into a person's bones and stays there for years. She sat perfectly still, staring at nothing, with her hands folded in her lap. She looked like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to rest. Danny chewed his sandwich and thought about it for a moment. Then he tore it in half and held out the bigger piece toward her. "Hungry?" he said. She turned her head slowly. Those dark eyes locked onto him, then moved down to the sandwich, then back to his face. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or suspicion. "It's chicken," Danny said. "I mean, station chicken, so it could be anything really, but it tastes all right." She stared at him for a long time, long enough that Danny started to wonder if he had done something offensive. Some species had rules about food. Some species had rules about strangers. He was about to pull his hand back and apologize when she reached out and took the half sandwich from him. She held it carefully, like it might break. She studied it, turning it slightly, and then she took a small bite. She chewed slowly. Her expression remained flat, unreadable, but she didn't spit it out, and she didn't hand it back. She took another bite. Danny smiled and went back to eating his own half. They sat like that for a while, 2 strangers on a bench, eating a torn sandwich in silence while ships drifted in and out of the bay below them. Danny finished first. He crumpled his brown paper wrapper and leaned back. "I eat here every day," he said, not really expecting a response. "Same bench, same time. In case you ever want to sit somewhere quiet again." She didn't answer. She finished the last bite of her half, brushed a crumb from her fingers with precise, delicate movements, and stood up without a word, without a nod. She walked away down the corridor and disappeared around a corner. Danny watched her go. He shrugged, picked up his bag, and went back to work. There was a pressure valve on level 3 that had been hissing since morning, and it wasn't going to fix itself. He didn't think about the woman again that day. He didn't wonder where she had come from or why she had been sitting alone on a forgotten bench at the edge of nowhere. He didn't notice the two figures who had watched the entire exchange from a maintenance alcove 30 meters away, dressed in dark uniforms, their hands resting on weapons that could cut through the station's hull. He didn't know that the half sandwich he had just given away was the first gift that woman had received in 27 years that came with nothing attached to it. He just went back to fixing pipes. She was already sitting there when Danny arrived the next day. Same bench, same spot at the far end, same gray clothes. She sat with her back straight and her hands in her lap, staring out the observation window at the ships below. She didn't look at him when he sat down. She didn't say hello. But she was there. And Danny figured that meant something. He unwrapped his lunch. Wednesday meant a rice bowl with bits of reheated vegetables and a sauce that the station kitchen called teriyaki but tasted more like salty sugar water. He had packed 2 portions this time, just in case. He set the second container on the bench between them and slid it toward her without a word. She looked down at it. Then she picked it up and opened it. She ate slowly, studying each bite before putting it in her mouth, like she was trying to understand the food rather than just taste it. "The sauce is weird, I know," Danny said. "But the rice is all right if you don't think about it too hard." She said nothing, but she kept eating. And when she was done, she set the empty container down and folded her hands again. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Danny said, "I'm Danny, by the way. I fix things around here. Pipes mostly, sometimes the air recyclers. Once I had to fix a door that kept opening and closing on its own, which was honestly more scary than hard." She turned her head slightly toward him. Those deep, dark eyes studied his face for a moment. Then she spoke for the first time. Her voice was low and smooth, like a stone settling into calm water. "Seal," she said. "Nice to meet you, Seal." She didn't say nice to meet you back. She just turned to the window again, but Danny didn't mind. Some people took time to warm up. He had a cousin back on Earth who didn't speak to anyone for the first hour after waking up every morning. People were different. Aliens were probably more different. She came back the next day, too. And the day after that. By the end of the first week, Danny had started packing lunch for 2 every morning without even thinking about it. It became part of the routine. Wake up, shower, pack 2 lunches, work, meet Seal on the bench, eat, talk a little, go back to work. The talking part grew slowly. Seal never said much about herself. When Danny asked where she was from, she said far away. When he asked what she did, she paused for a long time and then said she was traveling. When he asked if she was okay, because she always looked so tired, she changed the subject. But she asked Danny questions. Strange ones. "Why did you offer me food?" she asked one afternoon while Danny was eating a sandwich and explaining why mustard was better than mayonnaise. "Because you looked hungry," he said. "You didn't know me. You didn't know my species, my rank, my name. You knew nothing about me, and yet you gave me half of your only meal." Danny shrugged. "It was just a sandwich." "But why?" He thought about it for a second. "I guess because you were sitting alone and you looked like you were having a bad day. That's enough reason, isn't it?" She went quiet after that. She stared out the window for a long time, and Danny had the strange feeling that his answer had hit something deep inside her that she hadn't expected to feel. "Another day?" she asked. "Do you not want anything in return?" "In return for what?" "For the food, the company, your time." Danny laughed. "Seal, I fix toilets for a living on a station that nobody's heard of. I'm not exactly a man with a master plan. I just like having someone to eat lunch with." She looked at him like he had said the most confusing thing in the galaxy. "Not everything has to be a transaction," he added, chewing. "Sometimes a sandwich is just a sandwich." That evening, Danny went to the common area to watch the news on the big screen. Most of it was the usual stuff: trade disputes, a new colony being built somewhere, a fuel shortage on some route he'd never heard of. Then the screen showed something different, A quick report about increased security protocols in the outer territories. Something about an elevated presence of ascendancy vessels. The reporter mentioned that the Empress herself was rumored to be touring the border regions, though no official statement had been made. Danny watched it with half interest while eating a snack. He didn't know much about the ascendancy. He knew it was the biggest political body in the galaxy, that it governed over 900 species, and that its emperors had been in power for longer than Danny had been alive. That was about it. Politics bored him. He did notice something odd, though. Over the past few days, there had been more security officers walking the corridors of the station. Aliens in dark uniforms that he didn't recognize. They moved in pairs, always watching, always quiet. And there was a ship docked in Bay 7, the restricted bay, that had been there since the day Seal first appeared. It was sleek, black, and completely unmarked. No name, no flags, nothing. Danny thought about mentioning it to Seal the next day. Then he decided it was probably none of his business. He finished his snack, turned off the screen, and went to bed. On the bench, in the silence, Seal had finally found something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She didn't have a word for it yet, but it was warm and it came without conditions and it tasted like chicken on white bread. 2 weeks in, Danny brought an orange. He placed it on the bench between them like it was nothing special, just part of the meal. Seal picked it up and turned it in her hands, running her fingers over the textured skin. She had never seen one before. Danny watched her examine it with a small grin and said, "You peel it. Here, let me show you." He took it back, dug his thumb into the top, and peeled the skin off in a long spiral. The scent hit the air immediately, bright and sharp. Seal's nostrils flared. She leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes following the motion of his hands as he separated the segments and held one out to her. She bit into it. Juice ran down her chin. Her eyes went wide, and for the first time since Danny had met her, her expression changed completely. She looked surprised, genuinely, fully surprised, like she had forgotten the world could still offer her something unexpected. "Good?" Danny asked. "What is this?" she whispered. "An orange. Fruit. Grows on trees back on Earth." He handed her the rest. "Have it all. I've got more stuff in my bag." She ate every segment. She ate them slowly, one at a time, with her eyes half closed. When she finished, she held the empty peel in her hands and stared at it like it was something precious. That was the day things shifted between them. Seal started talking more. Not a lot, and never about herself directly, but enough that Danny could feel the walls coming down one brick at a time. She asked him about Earth. What did rain feel like? What was the ocean? Were the trees really that tall? Danny described all of it the best he could, and Seal listened with such focus that he sometimes forgot she wasn't human. He brought her different foods to try each day. She loved apples. She was fascinated by bread, how soft it was, how many shapes it could take. She liked rice. She tolerated the station's mystery meat. But cheese was where the experiment ended. Danny handed her a small cube of cheddar, and she put it in her mouth, chewed once, and then slowly removed it with her fingers and set it on the bench beside her with the careful precision of someone disposing of a small crime. "No," Danny said, trying not to laugh. "What have you done to that milk?" Seal said flatly. It was the closest thing to a joke she had ever made, and Danny laughed so hard he nearly dropped his lunch. She almost smiled. Not quite, but the corner of her mouth moved just slightly, and Danny counted that as a win. Over the following days, their conversations went deeper. Seal told him she held a position of some responsibility. Danny assumed she was maybe a regional administrator or a trade official. She had that energy about her, the quiet weight of someone who carried more than they showed. "It must be a lot," he said one afternoon. "It is everything," she replied. "Every decision I make touches lives I will never meet. I carry their futures without knowing their names." Danny let that sit for a moment. "That sounds incredibly lonely," he said. Seal didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at a cargo ship pulling slowly into dock. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than he had ever heard it. People speak to me because they must. They smile because it is expected. They agree with me because disagreeing has consequences they cannot afford. I have not had a real conversation in years. Not one where the other person simply said what they were thinking without calculating what it might cost them. She paused. Until this bench. Danny didn't know what to say to that, so he handed her an apple slice and said, "Well, I think your cheese opinion was wrong, but I respect your honesty." She almost smiled again. That night, Danny was walking back to his quarters after a late repair job when he passed through the common area. The big screen was on, cycling through news feeds. He stopped to stretch his back and glanced at the broadcast. A reporter was speaking over footage of massive ships moving in formation. Thousands of them, spread across a field of stars so wide it made Danny's station look like a grain of sand. The story was about the Ascendancy, the governing body that ruled most of known space. The reporter explained that the Empress had been on a quiet inspection of the outer territories for several weeks. No public appearances, no official events, just a private tour with a small security detail. The broadcast showed a single image of the Empress, taken from far away at some formal ceremony years ago. She stood on a platform above a crowd of thousands, dressed in white and silver, her posture rigid, her face unreadable. She looked powerful, distant, and completely alone. Danny squinted at the screen. Something about the shape of her, the way she held herself, tugged at a thought in the back of his mind. But the image was far away and blurry, and the thought didn't form into anything solid. He yawned, scratched his head, and walked to his room. He had an early shift tomorrow, and he needed to remember to pack an extra apple. Seal really liked the apples. Behind him, the screen flickered. The Empress stared out from the image with dark eyes that held no light in them at all. Danny knew something was wrong the moment he saw her. Seal was already on the bench, but she wasn't sitting the way she usually did. Her back wasn't straight. Her hands weren't folded neatly in her lap. She was leaning forward slightly, her shoulders pulled in, her head lowered. She looked smaller than he had ever seen her, like something inside had collapsed, and the rest of her was trying to hold the shape together. He sat down beside her. He didn't say anything right away. He just opened his bag and set out the food between them the way he always did. 2 sandwiches, an apple already sliced, a small plastic cup of juice he had taken from the mess hall. He pushed her share toward her. She didn't touch it. Danny ate in silence for a few minutes. Then he said quietly, "Bad day?" Seal didn't move. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. The smooth, careful control was gone. It sounded thin, like glass that had been hit one too many times and was about to give. "I made a decision last night," she said. "A necessary one. The correct one. Every advisor confirmed it. Every calculation supported it." She stopped. Her fingers tightened around each other in her lap. A fleet was approaching a populated system. 12 million civilians. If I gave the order to redirect our defense forces, those civilians would be saved. But the route the fleet was using passed through a cluster of small colonies. Mining settlements, outposts. 4,700 people. The fleet would pass through them on the way. Danny listened. He didn't interrupt. "I gave the order," she said. "The 12 million are safe. The fleet was stopped. But those colonies are gone. 4,700 people. Families, children, workers who had done nothing wrong and were simply living in the wrong place." Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed her lips together hard and breathed through her nose. "I did the math," she whispered. "I always do the math, and the math was right. But the math doesn't scream. The math doesn't have faces." Danny set his sandwich down. He sat still for a long moment, looking at her. He didn't try to fill the silence with comfort. He didn't say it was the right call, or you did what you had to do, or any of the things people say when they want to make someone feel better without actually sitting in the pain with them. Instead, he said, "Does it hurt?" She looked at him. Her dark eyes were wet. He had never seen that before. He hadn't even known her species could cry. Yes, she said. Good, Danny said softly. She flinched. I don't mean good that people died, he said quickly. I mean good that it hurts you. Because if it didn't hurt, I'd be worried. If you can make a decision like that and feel nothing, then something would be broken inside you. But it hurts. That means you still feel it. You still care about those 4,700 people even though you couldn't save them. He paused. The ones who stop caring are the ones the galaxy should be afraid of. Not you. Seal stared at him. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Her chest rose and fell with a breath that shook on the way in. Then another. Then her face crumbled slowly, like a wall coming apart from the inside out. And she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. She cried the way someone cries who hasn't allowed themselves to do it in decades. It came out in quiet, broken waves, her shoulders shaking, her hands pressed flat against her knees as if she was trying to hold herself to the bench. The sound she made was barely a sound at all, just a thin, trembling exhale that carried more weight than any scream could. Danny didn't touch her. He didn't hug her or grab her hand. He knew that sometimes when a person is falling apart, the worst thing you can do is try to hold them together. So he simply placed his hand on the bench between them, palm up, fingers relaxed, and left it there. Available. Not demanding. Just there. It took almost a full minute. Then Seal's hand moved from her knee, slowly, carefully, like she was reaching for something she wasn't sure she was allowed to have. Her fingers found his and curled around them. Her grip was tight. Her hand was cold. Danny held on. 30 meters away, hidden in a maintenance corridor behind a ventilation panel, 2 of the Empress's personal guards watched through a concealed camera feed. One of them, a tall officer named Drell, reached for the release on his weapon harness. No one touched the Empress. No one. It was the first law of the guard. Physical contact with the sovereign without permission was punishable by immediate removal, and the guard didn't use that word lightly. But before Drell could move, the hand of the head of security, Commander Riss, pressed against his chest and stopped him. Riss was old. She had served the Empress for 31 years. She had watched Seal close herself off, layer by layer, year by year, until the woman underneath disappeared entirely behind the title. Riss had seen her make impossible choices without flinching, attend funerals without weeping, and sit through ceremonies that would have broken weaker souls, all without a single crack showing. Now, on a forgotten bench on a station that didn't even appear on most maps, she watched the Empress hold the hand of a human pipe fixer and cry for the first time in living memory. Let her have this, Riss said quietly. Drell lowered his hand. Either of them spoke again. On the bench, Danny said nothing. He just held on. And Seal, for the first time in 27 years, let someone see her without her armor. Seal told him on the 18th day. Danny arrived at the bench that afternoon and found her standing instead of sitting. That was the first sign something was different. She always sat. She always waited with her hands in her lap, still and patient, like a statue that had learned how to breathe. But today she stood by the observation window, looking out at the docking bay with her arms at her sides and her back to him. You're standing, Danny said, sitting down and pulling out his bag. That's new. Should I be worried? She turned to face him. Her expression was calm, but there was something underneath it, something careful and heavy that she was holding in place with effort. I have to leave, she said. Danny's hand stopped moving inside the bag. He looked up at her. He had known this was coming. She had always said she was traveling. Travelers leave. That's what the word means. But knowing it and hearing it were two different things. When? He asked. Tonight. My ship departs at the 20th hour. Danny nodded slowly. He pulled out 2 sandwiches, 2 apples, 2 small juice cups, and a chocolate bar he had been saving for a special occasion. He arranged them all on the bench, then reached into the bottom of his bag and pulled out a brown paper napkin. He had drawn a smiley face on it that morning with a pen he borrowed from the supply closet. He placed it on top of her sandwich. "Here," he said. "Lunch for the road." Seal looked at the spread on the bench. She looked at the napkin with its crooked smiley face. She looked at the chocolate bar, still in its wrinkled wrapper, and something in her expression shifted. Not a crack this time, not a break, but a softening, like ice turning back to water. She sat down beside him. She picked up the napkin and held it in both hands, staring at the drawn face like it contained instructions she needed to memorize. "Danny," she said, "I have not been honest with you. About the cheese? I knew you secretly liked it. About who I am." He looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't deflecting. She met his eyes, and in them he saw something he hadn't seen before. Fear. Not the fear of danger, but the fear of losing something that mattered. "My name is Seal," she said. "That part is true. But I'm not a traveler. I'm not an official or an aide or a merchant." She paused. The air between them felt heavier. "I am the Empress of the Ascendancy. I rule over 914 species across 461 governed systems. I command the largest fleet in the known galaxy. Every law, every treaty, every military order in Ascendancy space passes through my hand." Danny blinked. Then he blinked again. Then he let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Okay," he said. "That's a good joke. You almost got me. It's not a joke. Seal, come on. You eat my sandwiches. You cried on this bench. You told me cheese was a crime against milk. You're not the Empress of everything. I am." He stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. Her face didn't change. Her eyes didn't waver. Then a sound came from behind him. A sharp, synchronized click of boots on metal flooring. Danny turned around. 12 figures stepped out from places he had never thought to look, from behind support columns, from inside maintenance alcoves, from shadows that should have been empty. They wore armor the color of deep space, black with thin lines of silver running through it, and they moved with the kind of precision that only came from years of training built on top of years of discipline. Each one carried a weapon at their side that Danny didn't recognize but understood immediately. These weren't station security. These weren't soldiers. These were something else entirely. They formed a line behind Seal, and then, in perfect unison, they dropped to one knee. Every single one of them. Their heads bowed, their fists pressed to their chests. The docking bay corridor went completely silent. A fuel technician who had been walking past froze mid-step, his mouth falling open. A dock worker dropped the crate he was carrying. It hit the floor with a dull thud that echoed in the sudden quiet. Danny looked at the guards. He looked at Seal. He looked at the guards again. His brain moved slowly through each piece of information, like a man walking through deep water. And then it arrived at the shore all at once. "Oh," he said. Seal watched him, her dark eyes unreadable, her hands still holding the napkin with the smiley face. Danny looked at the 12 kneeling warriors. He looked at the woman he had been sharing sandwiches with for 18 days. And then he said the first thing that came to his mind. "So did you actually like the sandwiches, or were you just being polite?" Seal stared at him. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then a sound came from her that none of the 12 guards had ever heard in their years of service. A laugh. A real one. It started small, just a breath that caught in her throat, and then it grew, shaking her shoulders, pulling her lips apart into something wide and bright. She laughed the way a person laughs when they've forgotten they could. The guards didn't move, but behind their helmets, glances were exchanged. Commander Riss, kneeling at the center of the line, felt her chest tighten in a way she hadn't felt in years. She had served the Empress for 3 decades. She had never heard that sound. Danny sat on the bench, surrounded by the most dangerous personal guard in the galaxy, and waited for an answer about the sandwiches. 3 weeks passed, and Danny went back to fixing pipes. He told himself it was fine. Life returned to its rhythm. Wake up, shower, fix things, eat lunch on the bench, sleep. The only difference was that now the bench felt bigger than before, and the lunch bag was lighter because he only packed for one again. The other workers on the station treated him differently after Seal left. Word had spread fast. The fuel technician who had frozen in the corridor told everyone he knew, and those people told everyone they knew, and within 2 days the entire station had heard the story of the maintenance worker who shared his sandwiches with the Empress of the Ascendancy. People looked at Danny in the hallways with a mix of awe and confusion, like he was either the bravest man alive or the luckiest fool in the galaxy. Danny didn't feel like either. He just missed having someone to eat with. He didn't expect to hear from her again. Empresses didn't keep in touch with pipe fixers. That wasn't how the galaxy worked. He figured their 18 days on the bench would become a strange, warm memory that he would carry with him for the rest of his quiet life. And that would be enough. Then the courier arrived. It came on an Ascendancy transport that was so clean and polished it looked wrong sitting in the station's docking bay, like a diamond dropped on a workbench. A tall alien in a formal silver uniform walked off the ship, asked for Danny Hale by name, and presented him with a sealed message cylinder engraved with symbols Danny didn't recognize. The station commander, a tired woman named Briggs who hadn't had an exciting day in 6 years, nearly passed out on the spot. Danny opened the cylinder in his room. Inside was a single sheet of material that felt like paper but shimmered faintly when he tilted it. The message was short, written in simple galactic common, the kind of plain language Danny preferred. It read, "There is a bench in my garden. It has no view of a docking bay, but the flowers are better than anything on your station. I would like to eat lunch there with someone who does not want anything from me. If you are willing, a ship will bring you. Come as you are. S." Danny read it 3 times. Then he packed a bag. It took him 4 minutes because he didn't own much. He put on his cleanest work jumpsuit, the dark blue one with only 2 small stains on it, and he packed a lunch, 2 sandwiches, 2 apples, a chocolate bar, and a napkin with a smiley face. The trip to the Ascendancy capital took 6 days. Danny spent most of it staring out the window of the transport ship at things he had never imagined he would see. Nebulas that burned in colors he didn't have names for. Space stations the size of moons. Fleets of ships that moved like silver rivers through the dark. He was a man who had spent his life in a metal box at the edge of nowhere, and now the galaxy was unfolding before him like a book he had never been brave enough to open. The capital world was called Elith. It was beautiful in a way that made Danny's chest ache. White towers rose from an ocean of green, connected by bridges that curved like music made solid. The sky was pale gold, and the air smelled like something between rain and flowers. Ships moved silently overhead, and the streets below were filled with species Danny had never seen, walking together, talking, living. He was escorted through halls that could have held his entire station inside them. Officials stared. Diplomats whispered. A group of alien dignitaries stopped mid-conversation and watched the human in the stained blue jumpsuit walk past them with a paper lunch bag in his hand. Then he saw her. Seal stood at the entrance to a private garden behind the central palace. She wore white and silver now, the formal dress of her station, and she looked every bit the ruler of 914 species. But when she saw Danny, something changed in her face. The mask softened, the weight shifted, and for a moment she was just the tired woman on the bench again. Danny walked up to her, smiled, and held up the lunch bag. "I brought the good mustard this time," he said. She almost smiled. Then she did smile. Then she turned and led him into the garden. It was the most beautiful place Danny had ever seen. Trees with silver bark and leaves that glowed faintly blue. Flowers that opened and closed in slow rhythm, like breathing. A small stream that wound between smooth stones and made a sound like quiet laughter. And in the center of it all, a bench. Simple stone, just big enough for 2. They sat down. Danny opened the bag and handed her a sandwich. She took it. They ate in silence for a while, the same way they always had, and the silence was the most comfortable thing in the galaxy. Centuries later, an alien historian named Paulus wrote what would become the most famous passage in galactic academic literature. It appeared in a text about humanity's role in the shaping of interstellar civilization, and it said this: "We studied humans for generations. We measured their strength, their speed, their capacity for war. We analyzed their technology, their tactics, their survival instincts. We prepared for their aggression. We planned for their ambition. But we missed the thing that actually changed everything. A human will give his lunch to a stranger and ask for nothing in return. He will sit beside someone who carries the weight of a galaxy and simply offer to share the load. He will make the most powerful being in the universe laugh, not through strategy, not through force, but through a kindness so ordinary that no one thought to guard against it. The galaxy was not conquered by human weapons. It was undone by human kindness.